I am so excited to bring everybody this conversation. Now, I am here with somebody that is a huge mentor of mine, someone that is a part of my family, has poured into me in every way imaginable. So to highlight him as an individual is truly an honor. So without further ado, let's jump right into it, presenting Jason Tyne. So Jason, I'm so excited to have you on here, and I really just want to go through a journey of your life, how you became who you are, because you have such a decorated past, you're such a successful entrepreneur, family man, and all of the above. So I want to start back when you graduated college. So you went to the University of Illinois, you graduated college there, and then I know you went straight into business, but what was the mindset that you had to have coming out of college to make you jump into the business world?
Well, it was not fast into the business world. I actually got started with my economics degree and my finance degree. I actually became a financial analyst for a health insurance company in downtown Chicago.
Wow.
And I got put on a team that was doing due diligence work for mergers and acquisitions. And I was in big meetings with big executives with big budgets. And here I was going around the country analyzing deals of acquisition. That's not what I went to school for. It's not what I thought I would do, but I've realized something about myself is, one, I understood numbers. I understood business. I understood being in a room, and I understood the power of being able to communicate financial information to executives who make decisions. And so that's kind of where I started into the business world, was in downtown Chicago working for a big company.
And how old were you when you started that?
I was in my early 20s. Early 20s, just married, just fresh into the world.
That's beautiful. Yeah. So being in your early 20s, saying that you were in board meetings with these top executives, doing due diligence for different companies, what was kind of the mindset you had to have going into there, being in your early 20s in such big environments?
Well, I think the first thing is sometimes you're a bit intimidated going from college life when you're in frat parties and bars and a college campus to all of a sudden you're sitting in a skyscraper in downtown Chicago in an all-glass building in a boardroom where people are walking in with three-piece suits that, they've been doing what they've been doing for a long period of time. They've got the gray hair, they've got the good look, they've got the smarts, they've climbed the corporate ladder. And here I am walking into a room as a young 20-year-old having to present information to them where serious business decisions are being had. And so it's a bit intimidating at the beginning, but then you realize that if you believe in yourself, you're like, man, I think I know something. I think I understand what the work that I do, and now you understand a bigger picture, and there's always a bigger game that's being played. And so that started to tap into my appetite for wanting to know more. I didn't just want to do my job and go back to my cubicle and go back to crunching numbers and big macro Excel spreadsheets. I was like, man, I want to be in all the other meetings that these guys are in. I don't want to just come in and present a piece of information, because they were going from one meeting to the next meeting to the next meeting to the next meeting. Like, man, what is it that they're doing, or what is it that they know that I don't know? And I always knew something else was going on. And then I started to get a belief in myself, man, I deserve to be in those rooms where other decisions are being made, and why can't I make those decisions?
Wow. So that's definitely a huge transition, like you said, going from college frat parties and having fun to straight to the corporate world and getting all that. So when you were in there, you mentioned that you had to learn what they knew in order to kind of level up and go through. So where was your start in terms of educating yourself and building your own mindset to get to that level where you can, walk into any boardroom, go from meeting to meeting to meeting with these, big executives?
Yeah, I had to take where my wife and I lived. We lived in a western suburb of Chicago, so I had to take a 45-minute train ride into downtown Chicago every day, 45 minutes in, 45 minutes back. And I hated reading. In college, I didn't like reading, never read a book, didn't want to read anything, certainly wasn't introduced to personal development, but someone introduced me to a guy by the name of John Maxwell. And so this is back at the time. He had a tape of the month club where you could buy a subscription. He'd send you this cassette tape, and it'd come with this little workbook, and the workbook was like fill in the blank workbook. So I started listening to these tapes in an old Walkman that had a cassette player in it. So I'm sitting on the train. Most people are sitting there reading the newspaper or doing work. And that was the first time I started getting into personal development. And I devoured those things. Every single month it would come, and every single month I would ride the train down to Chicago, ride the train back, listening, filling in the blanks of the book. And all of a sudden my mind started opening up to personal development because I'd never been exposed to it before.
Wow. So after you kind of got exposed to that personal development, you went through that, first experience with big executives. What made you make the decision to move away from that, and when did you move away from that?
A friend of mine, it's a great question. A friend of mine that I knew in Chicago, he had actually moved his entire family from Chicago down to Atlanta, Georgia. And he became the chief marketing officer of a large insurance company. And he and I were good friends. We got along well. He called me one time out of the blue. And he said, "Hey, Jason, do you love what you're doing?" And it was just at that point in time I'd been doing what I've been doing for about a year. And I didn't love what I was doing because I'm like, man, why can't I take the fast track up this corporate ladder? Like, why can't I go from crunching numbers to making decisions? But it's like the ladder is a slow moving train in a big corporation. And so I said, "Do you love what you do?" And I said, "No, I don't love what I do. I understand what I do, but I don't love what I do." And he said, "Hey, would you be willing to come down and interview for the company? I need a vice president of sales that will be responsible for all of North America." I'm only 26, 27 years old at the time. My wife and I didn't have any children. And I was like, "Sure, you're a good friend of mine. You've thought of me. You called me. I'm not satisfied where I am. There's probably another opportunity somewhere else. And what's the worst thing that could happen? I can go down there and not get the job, or I could go down there, get the job, and don't like the job, and then just move back."
Yep.
So it was a friend offering me an opportunity.
So at this point, you're still in kind of your young mid-20s, going into interview for this job at a big insurance company. Walk me through that interview process. How did you get in there with your friend's recommendation? How did that interview go? And what made you ultimately decide to take your family, move them all the way down to Georgia, and start pursuing that?
Yeah, it was this time in my life where I knew what I knew. Now I'm in business. Now I sat in some boardrooms. I sat in some meetings. I'm like, these guys aren't any better than me. I'm younger than they are. I think I understand something. I understand numbers, and I also understand how to communicate those numbers to make a decision. And so when I flew down to Atlanta, Georgia, my buddy got me the interview, and he was a good friend of mine, but he prefaced it, and this is a moment in time where I'm very arrogant and very ignorant, and probably also very naive, right? I think I'm as good as they come. And so my friend invited me down there, right? So that just puts like your arrogance up a little bit better. "Hey man, this is a friend of mine. I'm going to fly him down to Atlanta." And he said, "Hey, you're going to go have an interview with the president of the company. But I have news for you. You're probably not going to be in there longer than 20 minutes because he's very direct and to the point. And if you're not in there for 20 minutes, you didn't get the job." So that's just like his threshold. Anything less than 20 minutes, you don't get the job. Anything more than 20 minutes, you probably got a shot. And I said, "No problem, man. I'm going to be in there for an hour." And he's like, "No, most people can't make it 20 minutes. So it became a game for me. It's like, you said I can't do something, watch me go do it. And so I'll never forget that interview. It was a phenomenal interview. It told me who it's like to run a big corporation. I'm talking about multiple employees, a business that goes all over North America. And this guy, the CEO of the company, is who I'm interviewing with. And he said, "Well, why do you want the job that you're interviewing for?" And I told him, "I don't want the job that I'm interviewing for. I want your job." And he said, "Yeah, exactly right." He started laughing. He goes, "Yeah, everyone says that, but they don't understand the mental, physical, and emotional challenge that comes with my job." I said, "You asked the question." Right? You asked the question of why do I want this job? I told you I don't want this job. I want your job because I think it's the ultimate challenge. To challenge myself physically, mentally, and emotionally, no problem. I think that I can run something. I think I can do something. So if this is just a stepping stone for me getting into your seat, and I also told him I think that you have bigger dreams. You don't want to be in that seat the rest of your life. You're young, you're sharp, you're talented. I think you need to be somewhere else. And so when you exit that seat, someone needs to come into that seat. That's why I'm here. And then he proceeded to tell me a couple things that have always stuck with me in business. Number one, he said, if you have to keep asking me a question all the time about how to do something, one of us doesn't need to be here. And so that always stuck with me. It's okay to ask questions, but if you constantly have to rely on going and getting permission to do something, then really what did I hire you to do? And then two, he said, if you have to keep asking me what to do, then one of us doesn't need to be here. And number two, you can make a decision, which is what I always wanted to do in the previous job, was I want to be the one that's making a decision. He said, you can make a decision, a couple of stipulations, you can't just make it twice. And when you make a decision, and if it doesn't go right, you have the ability to make a six-figure mistake. So immediately he was giving me permission to be myself, make a decision, fail, but learn from my failure. And I said, you know what, this is a guy I want to work for.
And how long did that interview end up lasting?
It lasted almost an hour. So I walked out skipping, and I looked at my buddy and I said, I think I got the job. And he's like, man, you're in there a long time. I said, yeah, we had a lot to talk about.
That's awesome. So then now that you got the job, you moved your family down to Georgia, you and your wife, freshly married, moving, making that big jump. Walk me through kind of how that process worked. How did it develop with that career path? And what did you like better than the old one? What did you like worse?
The thing that I liked is I wasn't confined to the same office building every day. I wasn't commuting 45 minutes on a train and 45 minutes back and being like this. I felt like a cattle being herded into the city to go to work, and then a piece of cattle going back home. We lived 20 minutes from the office. My wife and I didn't have any kids at the time. And I loved that I wasn't confined to the office. I was a vice president of sales. So it took me all throughout North America, so all throughout the United States and all throughout Canada. I spent more time not in the office than in the office. And so I got exposed to so many different people that are out there chasing their dreams. I was working with commission-only salespeople. They're trying to build their business. And I just learned so much, and the personal development continued. I got more and more into personal development. I got to see people out there chasing their dreams, going after their destiny, trying to fight for financial freedom for themselves, and learning what was happening out there, and then being able to come back to an office where decisions are being made, and I had the authority and I had the capacity to make decisions that impacted all of these people's lives. And so it just opened up my eyes to, I don't like being in an office. I like being out. I like being with people, and I like being with people that are doing something with their life.
Yeah. So having the position of vice president of sales for a big insurance company, what was some of the strategies you used as a young entrepreneur to help increase those sales at a young age when you're entering this huge industry of finances and insurance? What were some of the things that you implemented to help boost those sales?
It was a couple things. I kept it really, really simple. I understood numbers, and I understood that there's leading indicators and there's lagging indicators. And I knew that if I could just focus on two leading indicators, and I poured everything into those two leading indicators, the lagging indicators, meaning revenue would go up through the ceiling. And so I just focused it. There's a lot of things that you can focus on in business, but if you focus on a couple of small things, like 2 or 3, and you go at it and you become an expert at those 2 things, then big things can happen. And so I found the 2 metrics that meant something to the business. And then what I did was I said, I'm not good enough to be able to do this myself. I went and formed 2 separate partnerships with 2 external companies, the best at metric number 1 and the best at metric number 2. And we formed a partnership, and then the 3 of us worked in unison. And all of a sudden, over a 18-month period of time, our sales increased 65%. We went from doing hundreds of millions of dollars a year to over billions of dollars a year.
Wow. So then you go on to travel the world with some of the biggest names in the industry. What was the transition like from that? You were vice president of sales. You just moved your, family over to Georgia. You're rocking and rolling, making, from 100 millions to $1 billion. What made you make the decision to not continue down that path and go down the path of educating the world?
A mentor. So the 2 metrics that I was focused on, I said I formed 2 external partnerships. Yep. One of them was with a guy by the name of Blair Singer, who became my mentor. So we traveled around. He's a sales and leadership expert, and he's a teacher's teacher. He's a pure educator. And he poured into me. Over that 18-month period of time, he taught me how to educate. He taught me the meaning of education. He taught me why to care for someone, to educate them. It wasn't to put on a show. It was to pull out of people what they rightfully deserve to get pulled out of them. And so he challenged me. After spending 18 months every other week doing big educational seminars with him, with all of our independent salespeople, he said, hey, man, you've got a gift, you've got a talent that I think God put inside of you, and the world needs to know that. You need to quit your job, and you need to go speak out in the world because the world is waiting for a message from someone like you. And so, same thing, man. I was still ignorant, still arrogant. I'm whooping ass, in the business. I'm young. We just had our first child at the time, my oldest son, Davis. And life was good. I was making great money. I had a no-limit credit card. Numbers are going up through the ceiling. I know exactly what I'm doing, and I'm seeing myself one step away from the chair that I said I wanted to get into. I'm like, man, if I just stay here, I'm going to easily be able to make my way up through this insurance company, and great things are going to happen. So I didn't want to leave. I wasn't looking to leave. Life was phenomenal. It's when a mentor says something to you, you take it to heart. And he said, you're going to hit a wall. And I immediately turned it down. He's like, hey, you should go out into the world and speak. And I immediately turned it down. I said, I'm doing great. He said, no, you're going to hit a wall someday. But when you hit the wall, make sure you call me first. And so I honored him as a mentor. Maybe another 6 or 7 months went by, and I did hit the wall. It was the third time I left a family vacation to go speak at an event. I don't know why it didn't bother me the first 2 times, but the third time it bothered me. And on the flight back, I'll never forget, it was from Banff up in Canada to Scottsdale, Arizona, where we were on vacation. And it was on that flight back that I actually hit a wall. And, God has his way of doing what God does. And when I landed in Scottsdale, it happens to be where my mentor Blair lives. And I said, you know what? You warned me that I was going to hit a wall, and I've hit that wall, and you need to come tell me how to get out of my job. I think I'm ready now. And so him and his wife came over and talked to me and my wife at our hotel in the lobby for many, many hours, telling me exactly how to get out of my job, what I need to do, the risks that were there, and that if I trusted him, that good things would happen, that he would introduce me to people. And so it still took me, a few months after that conversation to actually quit my job, to pull the ripcord out of that company and go off on my own where I'm not making any money. And now I'm just being exposed to the world. And so the first event that I did, my mentor Blair said, hey, I want you to come fly to Singapore to help me with this event that I'm doing, this 5-day program. I said, no problem. I've seen him do programs and workshops. I know every single thing he's going to teach like the back of my hand. And the first guy, I didn't know where Singapore was, right? So I had where's Singapore? Singapore's like on the other side of the planet from Atlanta. And so I asked him a question. I said, well, who do I go to get my flight? And he goes, well, that's you. So I'm used to a company credit card. I'm used to company corporate travel. I'm used to a company paying for my hotel. And now I got a fast, deep dive lesson into entrepreneurship and the ability to survive. And so I had to pay for my own way. I had to pay for my own flight, pay for my own hotel, travel to the other side of the planet. And then I sat there for 5 days. Day 1 goes by, he's teaching, I don't get introduced. Day 2 goes by, he's teaching, I don't get introduced. Day 3 goes by, I'm getting mad at this point. Like, dude, I thought I'm going to quit my job so I could go speak and teach around the world. I'm doing nothing but sitting in a chair in the back of the room. And now I'm just mad. I'm like, how am I going to tell my wife I quit my job and I'm over here? I had to pay to be here. I pay for my flight, pay for my hotel. I'm not getting paid, and I'm not even speaking. I'm not even talking. I'm not even being introduced. I'm sitting in the back of the room like I'm like just a piece of wood on the wall. Day 4 goes by, day 5 goes by, and I have enough respect for my mentor to not say anything to him during the 5-day workshop. But as soon as that 5-day workshop was over, I was like a flaming dragon. Like, how does this work? Tell me exactly how this works. How am I going to make money? I just quit my job. And he's like, well, do you remember the husband and wife couple that you're sitting next to? And I said, yeah, I remember them. They're sitting next to me every single day for 5 days straight. He goes, yeah, what you didn't know is that they're the owners of the world's largest personal development event organization on the planet. They own the rights to Tony Robbins, Robert Kiyosaki, Richard Branson. I told them about you, and I told them that you deserve to be on their stages, and they just wanted to see if I'd be willing to serve.
Wow.
And he goes, good news is you passed the test. So you never know when you're going to be put on a test, but it was my mentor that gave me the opportunity, that told me something about myself that he saw bigger inside of me than I saw in myself, that started to crack open my awareness to leave my job to go out into the world. So that was the beginning point of my journey into speaking around the world.
Wow. So the first thing is the flight to Singapore is what, 26 hours, something like, it's a long time.
Yeah, it's a long ways, man. And from the time I left my house to the time I get to the hotel, it's like 26, 28 hours later.
And you paid for that whole flight. Were you sitting, I'm assuming not first class?
I'm sitting in the coach economy class, back row, middle seat, because I'm like, dang, man, like this is a disaster. And I think at that time the one connecting flight that I had, I think was through India or something, and there were 5 seats in the middle. Wow. Sometimes you have 3 seats in the middle, so all you gotta do is crawl over one person. But I'm in the middle. There's 5 seats. I gotta crawl over a family. I'm like, excuse me, I got to get out of here. And I told myself never again. Like, I'll do it this time, but man, I don't belong in the back seat, in the middle of a back seat, and that like a sardine.
Going from bringing a company up 65% in their sales, unlimited credit card, moving it, taking this risk, believing in your mentor, to a 26-hour flight to build up all the, crawling over families, doing all that, sitting in the back of the room, and then somehow these 2 people were sitting right next to you because of your mentor setting that up. So what was your mindset going into that? I know you said you were angry towards the end, but you had enough respect to not bring it up during the 5-day workshop. So what were you doing in that 5-day workshop to make that husband and wife look at you and say, you passed the test?
Battling myself every single day, every single hour, sitting there saying, man, I want to talk. Like, I came here to teach. I came here to educate. I came here to show myself to the world. But it's a lesson of you versus you every day, man. So at any moment in time, I'm there because of a mentor. And I think that sometimes people don't respect people that way, or they've never found the right mentor for them. But when you find the right mentor, your trust in that person is everything. And so I knew that I've been with this person. I knew he saw something in me, and I trusted him. And so now it's a situation where I can learn what's being taught in the room, but the lesson that I'm getting is trust. Is trust yourself, trust your mentor. God put you here for a reason. Just keep honoring it. Just keep sitting here. Just keep making the environment as good as possible for my mentor without disrupting. He's there for a purpose. There's thousands of people in this room. These people paid a lot of money to sit in a room with my mentor for 5 days. They deserved the best experience possible. So if it meant me rearranging chairs during a break, if it meant me filling up water bottles during a break, if it meant me putting up clean flip charts during a break, whatever my mentor needed to make the context of the room the best room possible for these people to learn, I always learn you serve first. It may not be what you want, and you may know that you're destined for more, but when you're put in an environment to do something, sometimes you lead, sometimes you follow, and sometimes you get out of the way. But if you have a belief in yourself and you're willing to go to war with yourself all day long, do you really trust you? Do you really trust you that you made a decision and you put yourself in a situation where trust is now on the line? And I always trusted myself, and I trusted my mentor, and I trusted that God was doing something. I just didn't know what it was, but I was there to serve, and that was what I was going to do.
So then you passed the test. You were in Singapore. You passed the test. You fly back. Explain that process to get started in that. Was it instant? Did they call you right away and say, hey, we're putting you on a stage in, wherever?
No,
what was that process?
At that point, they were still working with my mentor, Blair. They said, hey, we do events with Blair all over the world. We'd like you to be able to help participate in the events with him around the world. So that's how it started. It was me doing events with my mentor. And then from there, they saw that then they saw me on a stage. Then they saw me what I could do. And then that led to, hey, would you be open to emceeing an event since you're already here doing this event with Blair? We have another event that's going on in Singapore. Would you be willing to be an MC, just be a host for it? And I'm like, man, I really want to teach. I just don't want to introduce people. I want to be introduced. Like, I want to be the one being introduced. And so that's how it started there, was just emceeing, not getting paid anything to do it. They would take care of a hotel for me, but not getting paid for the service that I was going to provide, which is just being MC and a host. And then I started learning, and then I started building a relationship, and then I started building trust. They started to trust me. They started to see me on a stage, because in between introducing people, I would teach, I would educate, even if it was for 1 minute or 2 minutes. But I said, if I ever get a minute or 2 minutes on a stage, I'm going to give it everything I've got, and you're gonna know that I have a story to tell, and I'm going to prove to you. I'm going to prove to myself, and I'm going to prove to everyone else in this industry that I deserve to be on the stage, and I deserve to be on the stage with the biggest of the biggest in the world. Wow.
So you mentioned you were doing this all pro bono. You were doing this all for free. How long did that last?
Too long. Talk to my wife. It was a long time.
Yeah.
And you go a long time without making money, without doing something. You believe in yourself. The opportunity is all around you. You're in the middle of the opportunity. The opportunity produces hundreds of millions of dollars a year in revenue to everybody else but you're a participant in it.
Wow.
It's like a train wreck in your brain. It's like a record scratching on the table. It's like, man, I can't believe I'm in this culture where it's the world's best, and everything's being taught about business and money and financial independence, and here I am just being a participant in the event but not making any money. And so eventually those things change. Eventually people realize your value. People realize, man, you deserve to be on the stage. And when that moment comes, because you've put in the work, right? And because you've been dedicated, and because you didn't ask for too much in the beginning, for me, it was more about the experience than the money. I knew that if I had the experience of speaking with the world's best in the world, I would learn how to become one of the world's best. I knew if I had the experience of being around business people and entrepreneurs that I too would become one. I knew that if I could not only do something on the front of the stage, but something behind stage, backstage, if I could sit in meetings like I had already done early in my life with these big business deals and mergers and acquisitions work, now I'm backstage listening to due diligence. These are all experiences. And I think most people focus on the short-term money, the quick fix, just pay me now. And I think that they don't realize the greatest reward you can get is an experience, because nobody can take away my experience and nobody has my experience.
Wow. So you go through this whole process, and I know you mentioned earlier in the conversation you had your first kid. How does your family feel, and what was the support that they had to give to have somebody like you traveling the world, not making money, doing it for free? Did they see the vision as well, and what was that kind of dynamic like?
I don't think that my wife has always been the greatest supporter of me, always believed in me, always trusted me, never told me not to do something. It was probably harder for her than it was for me, because she's not knowing what I'm doing. She's not in the event. She's not in the arena. She's not with the people I am. She's not learning the same things I'm learning. Doesn't really know what I do. She just knows I'm gone and I'm supposedly teaching or educating or doing something, but we didn't have any family with us around. So when we first started, it was very hard for my wife, right? So I'm gone 2 weeks at a time, then home for a little bit, then gone 2 weeks at a time. Newborn baby, Davis was just born, and no support system. So it was very challenging and very hard, but she was always supportive, always believed in me, which was great for me, right? Which was, man, if I'm halfway around the planet and I'm away from my family, the whole reason why I'm doing it is for my family. It was great to know that I had an anchor at home that was going through her own problem of, man, being basically a solo mom, brand new mom, solo mom, no mom and dad around, no sister at the time around. Our family would come and visit to help out a lot, which we just have a loving, supporting family that, man, if it was gone for a couple of weeks, then yeah, my family would come in and help out. But it was challenging. It was rough. But you learn a lot about why you're doing something, and it makes the reason for doing it even greater.
Absolutely. And I've known you for a good bit, and you are a dedicated family man. I've had the privilege and honor to spend some time with your family, and just the connection you guys have is absolutely extraordinary. So then you go through emceeing and you go through all the events, then you reach that point where it was too long of not getting paid. Now you move into being more of like the paid MC and everything like that. Go through some of the top experiences you've had. You mentioned you were with some of the biggest people in the industry. We have the picture behind you of all these legends that are on there, you included as being one of the top legends. Now give a couple examples of just some cool experiences that you had with some of these top names.
I think some of the greatest things is almost like these people are like their own rock bands, right? So it's like I got to be a participant in. Imagine you're in a rock band and like you went and toured the world with this rock band. Well, I had the unique experience of being in multiple bands at the same time, and they were all rock stars, right? And so Tony Robbins would have his own tour schedule. Robert Kiyosaki would have his own tour schedule. Gary Vaynerchuk would have his own tour schedule. And then in between there, we'd add people from the Shark Tank. We'd add Richard Branson in. We'd add these other people in, celebrities, entertainers, professional athletes. And so I got to be a part of multiple tours, right? And so I got to see the world's best of who they really are. And it's the reason why I loved being around them. It's the reason why I love serving their environments. I mean, Tony Robbins has 105 companies, does over like $7 billion a year in revenue. Robert Kiyosaki, being able to travel the world with him, go on airplane flights with him. Tony Robbins was rocking his own private jet, which I wasn't a part of that. But, what's cool about Kiyosaki is we got to fly around together. We got to travel around together. And so I got to learn that both of these gentlemen are great entrepreneurs. But at the heart, they're both mission-driven people that are pure educators. Their whole purpose is to educate people, to educate and empower people. That actually became a personal mission of mine. I was like, man, I love being around them. I love what they do. I love that they teach. I love that they educate. I love that they empower. But more importantly, I love that they're entrepreneurs. I love that they build businesses that create jobs, that create products, that solve people's problems. But their heart is around education. And so being around that became this internal ethos for me that, man, I am that. That is what I love. I love being in the environments. I love being in the different environments. And it's not only the front stage. What I loved also was just backstage, of seeing how they were backstage, seeing how authentic they were, seeing what it was that they were really doing. Because one is teaching a philosophy or teaching a strategy. The other is, do they actually do it? And unfortunately, in the personal development world, there's a lot of people that don't do what they're teaching. But these people do what they teach. And I'm like, man, I want to be that. I want to be authentic. I want to be powerful. And I want to add value to people's lives. And so it just had a tremendous impact on me.
Wow. And to kind of conclude the podcast, just you said you had to go or got to go with Robert Kiyosaki, travel with him, and he's a huge educator, does some powerful things. What was one bit of advice during those travels that has always stuck with you?
I was actually, I know exactly what it was for me. I mean, there's a lot, but one in particular, because it was personal. So we were flying, I can't remember, we were flying from the Middle East to Malaysia, or from Malaysia to Vietnam. It was somewhere in there. I can't remember the exact flight, but I remember sitting next to him on the airplane. And Robert was always reading a book. He's always a student, and he had this thick book, and it was dog-eared, and it had notes in it. And he's sitting next to me. He's probably 20, 30 years older than me, and I'm tired. He's got to be tired too. But I'm sitting there. I'm not reading a book. He's reading a book. Not just reading it, but like devouring it, like writing notes in it and putting sticky notes on it. I'm like, man, I've never seen someone devour a book like this. And he looked at me and he goes, well, what book are you reading? And I always have a book with me, but this time my book happened to be up in a bin up above me. And I said, oh, I got a book up there, and I grabbed it. And he asked me a question which always stuck with me. He said, are you reading that book because you already agree with 80 to 90% of what's in that book, or are you reading that book because you completely disagree with it and you're actually trying to learn? And that was a big lesson to me. I was like, man, if you were to go to my home and you were to look at my entire library of all my books, there are already books that I already agree with. And I think that's a problem for people when they learn. He told me there's 3 sides to a coin. Most people think there's 2 sides, heads and tails. He said there's 3 sides to a coin, Jason. There's heads, there's tails, and then there's the edge. Wisdom comes from learning from the head side of the coin, and then learning from the tail side of the coin, but then standing on the edge and seeing what this person has to say, and then seeing what this person has to say, and making a choice for yourself that's the wise move for you to make, not based on what someone else said. Wow. And so I never forgot that. As a matter of fact, he's like, hey, you need to come to breakfast with me tomorrow morning. I'm actually inviting a professor, an economics professor, to have breakfast with me. And the reason I have him coming to meet with me is because I completely disagree with him. But that's a lesson in learning, is challenge yourself. Don't just learn things that you already agree with, because then it limits your learning. It limits your capacity for understanding. Challenge yourself to learn in multiple things. Learn things, read things that you don't agree with, so that it increase your capacity, increase your awareness, and allows you the opportunity to make more wise decisions for your family.
Wow. I think that's a phenomenal way to kind of wrap this one up. If you guys have any other questions or anything, make sure to leave it down in the comments. This is a phenomenal educator destined to do even more phenomenal things than he's already accomplished in his life. This was just a sneak peek into his past. You are going to want to pay attention and make sure to stay tuned for his future, because it is going to be absolutely remarkable. So for even more great content like this, make sure to stay tuned, subscribe, and follow Play Big 08.